Um, we got a very beautiful story to tell you. Sharing the turning negative into positive is the words I've taken off the author. Joining us this evening is the Bristol author Ewule, whose book Jesus Light has been well received in our community. It's in the Bristol Royal Infirmary and the Central Library, and it's helping families facing unimaginable challenges. Um, Jesus Light. The book titles Cancer Took His Life, Love Kept His Light. What an amazing story we're going to hear now. Let me welcome Willie to the BBC. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you very much for having me on this great platform. Good evening, listeners.
So tell us who Chizi was.
Chizi was my son. A lovely boy. If I have to describe his features physically, he's got big eyes. He was 2.5 years old before he left us. He was a boisterous youngster. He loved his sister. They were together all the way up to nursery. He loved his mom, loved his dad, and he loved his friends. He loved to play, loved hopping, loved going on slides, and I guess what you could call a cheeky monkey, as most parents call it. But he was a lovely bundle of joy. He was our angel.
Yeah, and before Chizi came to be, your family's journey to having Chizi wasn't that straightforward, was it?
No. I like to say and use this word, and I actually used it in the book, which is our family was forged in the fires of adversity, and so it's always been quite a challenge, but one which we just had to handle. When we started off as a family and we're looking to have children, my wife was diagnosed with PCOS, which is a polycystic ovary syndrome, and she was told that she would not be able to have children. So you could imagine the sort of bombshell we kicked off started our family with. We worked through that, and she got pregnant, which was a great joy. And we went into Southmead as pregnant expectant parents do, first trimester. Looking forward to all of that, and actually got there for the first 3-month scan, and unfortunately there was no heartbeat. So that was, our second bombshell. So we had to fight through that, and then a year later on, she actually got pregnant. And to point something out, Kevin, which is no coincidence, and it's been highlighted in the book, the evacuation she had from the failed pregnancy or the miscarriage was carried out on 28th of October 2009. Omasi, our first daughter and our angel, was born on the 28th of October 2010. Now, that's no coincidence. Call it what you may, it is no coincidence. God wanted to bring, or to compensate for what we had lost. And that's our belief, because we are Christians,
So let's go back to Chizi. Just 3 months old, your whole world changed. What was that?
Right. So Chizi came to us, and what happened, and this it's playing in my head just like it was yesterday. We had taken him for a vaccination. I can't remember. I think it is the 12-week vaccination, and they had to inoculate him by his thighs. And I remember him coming back from that with a swelling the size of a golf ball on his thighs. And if you can imagine how tiny a 3-month-old is. And so we were worried. We went back to the GP, and they said that was pretty normal. He was reacting to the vaccine. And so we stayed with that. But about a week later on, he stopped eating and his stomach got swollen and really hard, literally rock hard. After that, we went to the GP. GP was concerned, sent us all the way to BRI. We got into BRI and they diagnosed him with neuroblastoma. Now, neuroblastoma, for those who don't know, is a rare form of cancer that it's not that common, but it is prevalent amongst children mainly. And it happens in different parts of the body, but it affects the nerves. And in his case, the tumor was actually in his stomach and grew. So that we dealt with, that got treated. So after 3 months, he survived that, and we pretty much had a normal life after 3 months for 2 years. However, something significant I must point out was before he had commenced the treatment for the neuroblastoma, the doctors had actually got me to sign a waiver to say that there is a 1 in 1,000 chance that the actual treatment could come back as a secondary cancer. Now, at that stage, we were dealing with neuroblastoma, so if you can imagine, that was, sounded negligible to me. And so, of course, I had to sign just so he could get the treatment. But unfortunately, the treatment actually did come back in 2 years as a secondary cancer and gave us literally almost no chance. And that plus some things I try not to dwell on because it's torturous for me to dwell on it. But we did actually take him in to the hospital, and he was misdiagnosed on 2 occasions leading up. In fact, on one of the occasions, the ambulance actually came to the house and took him in to the hospital, and he was diagnosed with hand, foot, and mouth disease, which was a virus going around at the time. But when we actually did take him to the hospital, we had very, very little chance. We took him in, picture this, we took him in on a Monday at about 6 p.m. and by Wednesday noon he was gone. So I think that paints the picture of how sudden and how much notice we actually had to grapple with the concept that the secondary cancer had now come back in the shape of leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia, stage 4, to actually take our boy away.
I wanted that silence for just a few seconds. We're going to listen to a song and then we'll come back and talk about how you've managed to turn this negativity into positivity. It's so relevant at this point in time as well. Luther Vandross and Dance with My Father Again. My guest this evening is the author Okoye, whose book Jesus Light is already being received very well in our community. It's in the Bristol Royal Infirmary and the Central Library, and it's aiming to help families facing unimaginable challenges of losing a young one. In this case, lost his young one to cancer. He's still with us this evening. I can't imagine how do you move from something like that story we just heard to shining light into a positive aspect of Chizi, and coming out with this book, Jesus Light. How much is it taking you to do so?
That is a very interesting question. In my experience, over the last 10 years, you don't move away, you don't move from something like that. You move through something like that because it's there, it's happened, can't run away from it. The worst effectively has happened. The worst thing anyone can think about as a human being has happened, which is to lose someone who you owe a duty to nourish, protect, care for, and guide. So effectively, I went into autopilot. If we were to go through, and all of this very well articulated in the book, I went into autopilot. which we do as men, and especially where I'm from, Nigeria, you just get on with stuff, as people believe. They don't talk much about it. In fact, you talk to people about things like grief, they tell you, don't talk about it, just forget it. But effectively, the way through was to change my focus. Well, not change my focus, but accept the situation and focus on the family, on how we get through this. Luckily, I had my mom around that period. My mom had made a very difficult journey from Nigeria to the UK because she was absolutely adamant she wanted to see her miracle baby, who had survived neuroblastoma at the 3 months. But unfortunately, in the 2 months or so that my mom spent with us, we lost Chizi. So a bittersweet pill for her there, if you can imagine, meeting the grandson she never met, and at the same time bonding with him immensely, and then saying goodbye to him. So how we move through this, you just get on with life. At that stage, we didn't have anything like Chizi's Light. I very much wish, and that's part of the driver for writing this book, I wished I had something like this where I could have just looked at and read and understood and accepted that some people had actually gone through or walked the same path or the same journey.
And that's what you've been finding from the journey of taking Chizi's Light out.
Absolutely.
Well. So,
and this is the reception I'm actually getting from people. I mean, I wrote this book for I was saying to you off air, I wrote this book for just a handful of reasons, and it's stated in the book. One, to highlight things which are not normally talked about, which are perceived as taboo subjects, which in fact women do go through. My wife went through that, but they don't talk about it. They don't talk about things like PCOS out in the open because, who wants to tell their friend that they're unable to conceive? They also don't talk about miscarriage. Hence the reason why people don't tell people about the first 3 months during pregnancy, just in case you lose the baby, so no one knows. And so you can imagine, and you and I, I'm sure, know so many people who've had miscarriages. And who do they get to talk to? They have to keep it to themselves because no one knew they were pregnant anyway because they didn't tell anyone, and they just have to suffer that by themselves. Another reason I wrote the book was legacy, to preserve Chizi's legacy and his story, so in the future, no one can twist that in any way, shape, or form. So these were my initial drivers for writing the book, and of course, to enlighten people, to help people understand that we've been down this road and that they can come through it. So it's all about telling people that you can be resilient. You can face adversity no matter how bad things have been, and we actually hit rock bottom. You can bounce back. A couple of things help with that. Time actually does help with that. But something that is even more important is purpose. You've got to have purpose. You have to use purpose to drive through that adversity. And that's what turns you into being resilient. The way I see it, you could actually be resilient and you come out on the other side absolutely broken. But with purpose, I think that gives your resilience, a vehicle through which you could actually accomplish things that could actually help other people.
So you have a book launch coming in October. How do you want the listeners now to get involved in this story?
Thank you for mentioning that, Kevin. I almost forgot about talking about Chizi and his story and purpose and resilience. Yes, the first way in which people can help and support our efforts here is to first of all go buy the book, because that I wrote the book. Yes.
Where can they get it from?
They can actually get the book from Amazon, and you can get it on Waterstones websites. In your actual Waterstones, you could order it. So this is where I was saying it's actually done better than I thought. And you did mention there that it's doing well in our community. Yes, it's doing absolutely brilliantly in our community, but it's doing that beyond the community as well. Because I think that the challenge that we've got here in terms of how we deal with grief, how we deal with adversity, how we deal with how you help people, I think it's a societal problem. I think it goes beyond just our community. So people need to be have more empathy. You need to understand that there are things, you don't need to wait till you have a death in your family or you experience
To
it directly,
appreciate. Yeah.
you know, to actually appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, we need some outlets. Can you tell us some outlets where people can?
Yes, and yeah, of course you could. So many ways. Something very important that I forgot, and I'll shoot myself if I don't mention this. This book supports Children with Cancer UK. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. Okay, so it actually supports Children with Cancer UK. I'm working hand in hand with them, and for every book sold, they get a percentage of the proceeds from the sales of books. And I'm also partnering with Children with Cancer UK on a pioneering project, which is called Project Dads. And they're using this book as a blueprint, and that's to try and understand what dads go through in difficult situations like this, because there's very little literature out there to support dads who go through grief. So it's very important. Now, on how you could actually help, sorry, Kevin, on how you could actually help, before I do that, I just want to take the opportunity to thank HSBC. They've shown an interest in sponsoring the book launch, which is planned for October. What we're trying to do is to pull together organizations within Bristol to come together to support this, because each support that you provide to us actually helps another family going through a very difficult time.
I have to say, we obviously closer to the book launch will want to hear some more about how it's been going, and
I'll come back definitely.
Yeah, that would be really good, and see how effective it's been for those who've lost loved ones as well. I've got to say a big thank you, Kay Woolley. Thank you for sharing Chizi's light with us today. The date for your diary is October 26th. Yeah. 2 to 4 p.m. at St. Nicholas Church in Easton.
And if anyone wants to reach out to me personally, and this has been happening, you can reach out. You can go on Facebook. There's Chizi's Light has its own page on Facebook. My name is OK, spelled O-K-E. Surname is spelled E-W-U-L-E, and that's on. I have a page on Facebook talking about this mainly. You could also email me directly. I'm giving you my personal email. If you need to talk to me about some challenges you're going through, if you are an organization and you want to sponsor or support me in any way, it's OKE, first name, .EWULE, surname, @gmail.com.
Thank you very much. Oh, DJ Star, just listening to that story. We'll come back on that shortly.
Yeah, it's powerful story. But commend him for perseverance and sharing that story with us. Amazing.
Okay, better late than never, but let's we'll talk about the originators after this.
Clear. Over 66 million years ago, our world was
what I'll do, Star, is
by dinosaurs.
I got both of them lined up.
We can tell their story.